This is where the contest really began. This is where the adrenaline would really start to pump. The first time I walked in here was the semifinals in 1977, the year Punk kicked off in the UK. My locker. Ah, what's in here? You remember this, right? Kind of appropriate. That's how people saw me. An 18-year-old punk kid from Queens, New York, who had somehow made it to the semifinals at Wimbledon. Now, in a way, I felt I had no right to be here. My opponent that day was Jimmy Connors. Yes, and I was pretty intimidated. Jimmy had already won Wimbledon in '74 against Rosewall, been in the final against Arthur Ashe in '75. He was the real deal. His intensity on the court was, well, intense. Ah, look what we have here. Jimmy's racket. The T2000. Made of steel. Man, he could hit hard with it. Now I, on the other hand, played with the wooden Dunlop Max Ply. It allowed me to feel the ball in a way that suited my serve and volley game. So yeah, I was feeling pretty nervous and out of my league. To this point, I never played or even exchanged a word with Jimmy. Now remember, I walked up to him to say hi, but like a boxer psyching up for the big fight, he wouldn't even look at me. Yes, that pretty much set the stage for me and Jimmy. From then on, every match we played was like a prize fight. We'd spend the changeovers trash talking and squaring off and then going at it like a pair of gladiators. But Jimmy was a fantastic opponent for me. I got off on his intensity. It suited me just fine. I had some fantastic battles out there, and not just with the guys on the other side of the net.
You cannot be serious! That ball was on the line!
Well, I guess the last thing you can ever say is that I was boring to watch. The best years of my career when I was chasing down Connors and Borg to be #1 in the world. Now, who can forget Bjorn Borg? You remember this shirt? With Bjorn, it was the exact opposite of me and Jimmy. I never even acted up with him. I idolized the guy. He was like some kind of Viking god who'd somehow landed on the tennis court. The match that everyone remembers is the 1980 final, where the 4-set tiebreaker went 34 points. Here is just a couple. The irony is, because of this tiebreak, people usually think I won the match, even though I lost it in the final set.
Yes, 2 sets all.
Maybe my dad thought I won too. This sad passing shot gave Borg his 5th straight Wimbledon title. The next year, however, I got the rematch I'd wanted so badly, and this time I beat him. It is impossible to describe what winning my first Wimbledon felt like. I'm not even sure I can even tell you now. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of. But I'll tell you this, the second I picked up the trophy, I knew I wanted to win it again. Ah, white ball. I had gotten the Wimbledon bug, big time. Now, the late 80s and 90s was a time of big change in the men's game. It was the era of the big servers, the baseliners, the huge rackets. I'm not taking anything away from the big hitters and servers. And there's no doubt that this guy was one of the best servers ever. At only 17, Boris Becker was the youngest player ever to win the men's Wimbledon championships. Huge in every respect. A physical phenomenon with the personality to match. Andre Agassi was another big hitter. Like me, he saw the ball early. But unlike me, was capable of delivering truly massive ground strokes. He became the men's champion in '92 against Goran Ivanisevic, ending a sweet late comeback run from yours truly in the semis. On our way off the court, I had to remind him to bow to the royal box. Imagine the irony of that. In my final Wimbledon singles match, I was teaching manners to the next generation. And if one thing defined the next generation, it was the service game. Patrick Rafter there, but it was Pistol Pete Sampras, probably the biggest and most consistent server in the last 25 years, who on his day, which was more often than not, was just about unstoppable. His monster serve was the weapon that brought him to an unbelievable 7 Wimbledon singles finals victories. It's the shot that continues to define the men's game. Now, is it the way tennis should continue to evolve? I think that if these great memories teach us anything, it's that if played well, tennis is a game of skill, dexterity, guts, determination, but above all, personality. Now, I feel privileged to be part of Wimbledon history. Long may it reign. Oh, and by the way, that ball was on the line.
Never happened to anywhere else but here. So it's not quite so much of a performance thing as the actual ceremony. But no, once you want it, you sort of block everything out. And then you realise it. I think it took me about 3 days to realise I had to do it.
You cannot be serious, man. This is just how it was. Wimbledon. The men's locker room. The main event. If you made it in here, you knew you were someone. This is where the contest really began. This is where the adrenaline would really start to pump. The first time I walked in here was the semifinals in 1977, the year Punk kicked off in the UK. My locker. Ah, what's in here? Ah, you remember this, right? Kind of appropriate. That's how people saw me. An 18-year-old punk kid from Queens, New York, who had somehow made it to the semifinals.